שמש דקה ומרפא בכנפיה.
I'd like to focus together with you today on the relationship between Boaz and Naomi. And I have to admit that I did not observe that. I'm taking something that is the observation of a Jewish exegete, of a modern Orthodox lady. Her name is Yael Ziegler. And she observes that Boaz and Naomi in the whole story of Ruth never ever meet even once. She says that Boaz seems to ignore Naomi, her presence, her tragedy, and her poverty. Everything that Boaz does is focused on Ruth, but he does not even refer once to Naomi in any of his encounters with Ruth. Boaz's disregard for Naomi continues in chapter 3, and he seems to completely omit Naomi, only focus his concern on the virtuous and honorable Moabite woman. His generosity is towards Ruth, and Boaz only mentions Naomi in chapter 4 within the context of the ongoing formal legal transaction, where he needs her urgently. Otherwise, the whole concept of redemption doesn't work. Now, what I pulled together here are observations of Yael Ziegler in throughout her whole book on the book of Ruth. But you can imagine that I had in mind the parallel that I see, that Boaz stands for Jesus and Naomi stands for the Jewish people and Ruth for us Gentile Christians. And I had the thought that what Yael Ziegler is observing here precisely describes the situation of the past 2 millennia of church history, in which we non-Jewish believers only had our Jesus in mind. Countless Christian theologians over the past 2 millennia never tired to emphasize that the New Testament calls into question the centrality of the Jewish people, that Jesus is concerned only about the Christians and with all humanity. In doing so, we have completely lost sight of an even ignored Naomi, the Jewish people, who actually play an indispensable part, a central part in God's scheme of redemption. Yael Ziegler writes at one point, the fact that Boaz and Naomi never meet is likely not coincidental. In this schema, Ruth is solely responsible for Naomi's survival. Yael observes that who is responsible to giving food to Naomi? It's Ruth. Boaz gives the means to Ruth to help Naomi. And only thus Boaz indirectly helps Naomi due to his concern for Ruth. Just continue this train of thought. What does it mean for our relationship as Gentile Christians to the Jewish people? Paul writes, I just want to give you this hint. Paul writes in Romans 11:11, to his non-Jewish readers in Rome, salvation has come to the Gentiles for the very purpose that Israel should envy you. So, salvation coming to us Gentiles, non-Jews, has the Jewish people in view. Why is it, asks Yael Ziegler, this Jewish Orthodox lady, that the salvation of the Jewish nation comes at the hand of Ruth, a foreigner and an outsider? And it is the Midrash, the ancient Orthodox Jewish exegesis of the book of Ruth, that observes that Ruth is responsible for Naomi's food. She provides the solution for Naomi's continuity. Ruth also mediates between Boaz and Naomi, allowing Boaz to provide indirectly for Naomi's salvation. In doing so, Ruth begins to fix the broken situation, leading ultimately to the kingship which can heal the fractured society. This is very much talked into today's situation. Why do we as Christians not take our responsibility as mediator between Boaz and Naomi? If Christians tell me I have Jesus, so I don't need Israel anymore, and what the Jews need is Jesus. Anyone who thinks this way has not understood this fundamental legal connection in the process of redemption. And he seems to totally disregard how God acts. He seems to have taken the entire work of redemption out of the hands of our Father in heaven, because, I say it ironically, we can do it much faster, much more logical, and much more effective. We have to understand the Redeemer is only responsible for his next of kin. And only as Naomi's only as Naomi's Redeemer does Boaz save Ruth. Only as Goel Israel does Yeshua become the Savior of the world, the Moshiach HaOlam. This is actually also underlined by the use of words in the New Testament. You have that very clearly. Yeshua is called the Goel Israel, the Hriamenos, the Redeemer of Israel, and only through being the Redeemer of Israel, he becomes the Moshiach, the Soter, the Savior of the world. We have to understand that very often we have imposed our pagan understanding of salvation on Jesus and have nothing understood of the broad lines and the subtle context, the depth of the biblical revelation. We have to understand, unless all Israel is saved, and with all Israel, I mean its simple original sense, the whole of the Jewish people. Unless all Israel is saved, we as non-Jews, as non-Israel, as non-people, as a foolish nation, have no chance either. Anyone who even scratches the significance of the people of Israel undermines their own future.